I sent the email at 2:47 a.m., when desperation makes you believe in miracles and misspelled contact fields. By 7:08 a.m., $10 million sat in my account with a memo that made my blood run cold. Dowry, non-refundable. I didn't know his name yet, but I knew the texture of power when it wrapped around your throat and called itself mercy. The man who answered my plea for time didn't ask what I wanted. He told me what I'd become: his fiancé, his shield, his exquisitely controlled disaster, and the vote was in 3 weeks. The 6:15 bus smelled like wet coats and someone's microwaved breakfast burrito. I pressed my forehead against the window and watched the city blur past. Gray buildings, grayer sky, the kind of morning that tasted like instant coffee and financial dread. My phone sat heavy in my pocket. I hadn't checked my bank account yet. Checking it before caffeine was a rookie mistake, the kind that ruined your entire day before you'd even clocked in. I toggled my court badge against the turnstile at City Hall and rode the elevator to the 3rd floor, nodding at clerks I recognized, adjusting my headset as I walked. Tuesdays meant arraignments. Arraignments meant a parade of people having the worst day of their lives, while I turned their fear into clean, neutral sentences a judge could use against them. I was good at it. Precision, no emotion. Switch languages like switching channels. Italian, Spanish, English, back again. My brain didn't have time to feel. It just processed. The courtroom was already half full when I slipped into the interpreter's booth. Judge Ortiz was reviewing files, her reading glasses perched on the end of her nose. I pulled out my notepad, my water bottle, my phone, and that's when I saw it. The notification. Bank of America. Deposit $10 million. My vision tunneled. The numbers didn't make sense. 10 million. My hands went numb. I fumbled the phone, caught it, stared at the screen like it might rearrange itself into something rational. I opened the app with shaking fingers. Deposit, $10 million. Memos. Memo, Dowry, non-refundable source, Costa Urban Trust. My stomach dropped into my shoes. Costa. I knew that name. Everyone in this building knew that name. Valerio Costa, the man who owned half the waterfront, who sent lawyers in Italian suits to argue zoning permits, whose civic contributions kept half the council in office. The man whose last name appeared on court dockets in careful, plausible deniability distance. I was going to be sick. The email, the one I'd sent at 2:47 a.m. after the debt collector moved my mother's deadline up by 2 weeks, and I'd spent 3 hours building an amortization table that proved I could pay back $20,000 over 18 months if someone, anyone, would just give me time. I'd been aiming for the court charity fund. I'd been exhausted. Oh God. I'd transposed 2 letters in the contact field. My plea for help had gone to Valerio Costa, and he'd answered, with $10 million, labeled Dowry. I stood up so fast my chair scraped. Judge Ortiz glanced over, one eyebrow raised. I forced a smile, gestured vaguely toward the hallway. Bathroom, Your Honor, 2 minutes. And stumbled out of the booth. The corridor was marble and echoes. I leaned against the wall, pressed my palm against my chest, tried to remember how breathing worked. This wasn't real. This was a mistake, a clerical error, Ms. Marlowe, the voice came from behind me. Low, quiet. The kind of sound that didn't need volume to fill a room. I turned, and the world tilted. He stood 10 feet away, just outside Judge Ortiz's chambers, hands in the pockets of a charcoal suit that fit like it had been born on him. Tall, taller than I'd expected, with dark hair swept back, sharp jawline, and eyes that pinned me to the wall without moving. He wasn't classically handsome. He was something worse, inevitable, the kind of face that made you forget how to look away. Heat slammed into my chest. Not the soft flutter of attraction. This was a full-body hit. A live wire dragging up my spine and pooling low in my belly. My pulse kicked so hard I felt it in my throat. Do not react. Do not breathe like that. His gaze tracked over me, slow, assessing. I felt it like fingers tracing my collarbone, my wrists, the place where my skirt hit just above my knees. When his eyes returned to mine, I saw something flicker there, recognition maybe, or satisfaction. Mr. Costa, I managed. My voice came out steady, a miracle. You dropped something. I glanced down. My notepad had slipped from my hand and scattered pages across the marble. I crouched, grabbed for them, and he moved. 2 strides, soundless, and knelt beside me. His fingers brushed mine as he steadied a page. The touch lasted half a second and burned for 10. I snatched the papers back, stood too fast, pressed them against my ribs like a shield. He rose with me, and God, he was close. Close enough that I could smell cedar and something else. Smoke, maybe, or the leather interior of an expensive car. We need to talk, he said. I don't. My throat closed. I didn't mean to. I know. His voice was calm. Too calm. Like he'd expected this. Like he'd planned for this. Conference room C, 5 minutes. It wasn't a question. He turned and walked back toward the chambers, and I stood there in the hallway, heart racing, hands shaking, pages crumpled against my chest. 5 minutes. I should run. I should call my bank, reverse the transaction, file a complaint, disappear into the subway, and never come back. Instead, I checked the time, smoothed my skirt, and walked toward conference room C, like a woman who still believed she had a choice. The conference room was small, windowless, and aggressively beige. A table, 4 chairs, a water pitcher sweating condensation onto a stack of coasters. Valerio Costa stood at the far end, jacket unbuttoned, one hand resting on the back of a chair. He watched me enter, didn't smile. I closed the door behind me. The click of the latch sounded like a sentencing. Sit. I didn't. I need you to reverse the transfer. No. The word landed like a gavel. Final. Inarguable. Mr. Costa. Valerio. He gestured to the chair. Sit, Elena. Hearing my name in his mouth did something to my knees. I sat. He moved around the table and took the chair directly across from me. Close enough to touch. Far enough to let me pretend I had space. You sent an email, he said. A very detailed, very well-researched request for financial assistance. $20,000, 18-month repayment plan. You included tax documentation, your mother's employment records, and a breakdown of your court certification costs. My face burned. That email wasn't meant for you. I know. He leaned back, fingers steepled. But I received it, and I answered. With $10 million. Yes. Why? His gaze didn't waver. Because you asked for time, and I can give you more than that. I don't want. You want your mother safe. You want your certification protected. You want to finish your degree without choosing between rent and tuition. He tilted his head. Am I wrong? I hated that he wasn't. The money, I started, is already in your account. Non-refundable. Legally classified as a dowry. He said it like he was reading a grocery list. We'll announce the engagement tomorrow. Press release at noon. You'll move into a secured apartment by the weekend. The room spun. I'm not, what? My enemies are forcing a political marriage to control a waterfront rezoning vote. I need a counter-narrative. You need protection. He leaned forward. This solves both problems. I didn't agree to. You will. The certainty in his voice made my hands curl into fists. You can't just. I already did. He slid a folder across the table. Inside, a letter from the Judicial Ethics Board confirming your reassignment away from any Costa-related hearings. Your certification is protected. Your mother's employment is secured with a 5-year contract at her clinic. Full benefits, salary increase. Your tuition is paid through your master's degree. I stared at the folder like it might bite me. Open it. I did. Every word he'd said was true, printed on official letterhead, signed and notarized. My throat closed. Why? Because you didn't ask for luxury. You asked for stability. Competence attracts me, Elena. Integrity makes me possessive. His voice dropped, just slightly, just enough to feel like a hand sliding up my spine. You wanted relief. I am relief. And the cost is standing beside me in public and letting the world believe you chose this. I didn't choose this. You will. He stood. Because the alternative is your mother's clinic loses its largest donor. Your court supervisor receives an anonymous ethics complaint about your financial irregularities, and the debt collector comes back, this time with interest. Ice flooded my veins. You're threatening me. I'm protecting you, he buttoned his jacket. The world outside this room will eat you alive if you're alone. With me, You're untouchable. He moved toward the door, paused with his hand on the handle. Press conference tomorrow, noon. Wear something that photographs well. He glanced back. And Elena? I looked up. You'll learn to like the cage. I built it to fit. The door closed behind him. I sat alone in the beige room, staring at the folder, at the signatures that bound me tighter than any chain. My defiant mantra screamed, I will not owe myself to anyone. But my hands were already reaching for a pen. I signed the paperwork at 11:47 p.m. in my apartment, under the yellow glow of my kitchen lamp, while my mother slept in the next room and my bank account still blinked that impossible number. Valerio had included a phone number on the last page. I texted it. Done. The reply came in seconds. Good girl. Car picks you up at 11 a.m. Wear navy or charcoal. I threw the phone on the couch and pressed my palms against my eyes. Good girl. My pulse kicked. I hated him. I hated that my body had memorized the exact timbre of his voice, the way his fingers had steadied that paper, the heat that had flared low in my belly when he'd leaned across the table and called me competent like it was a love letter. This was a transaction, a deal. I was playing a part to survive. I just had to keep telling myself that. Even if my traitorous nerves had already started counting the hours until I saw him again. The car that arrived at 11 a.m. was black, silent, and driven by a man who didn't ask my name. He opened the door, waited until I slid into leather seats that smelled like money, and pulled into traffic without a word. I wore charcoal, a sheath dress I'd bought for my certification interview, the one that made me look older, more serious, less like a 22-year-old who'd just sold herself to a man she'd met in a marble hallway. My hands twisted in my lap. I'd rehearsed 17 different speeches on the bus last night, variations of I made a mistake and this has to stop. But every version ended the same way, with my mother's job security and my own financial ruin. The car stopped in front of a building I recognized from campaign donation scandals and architectural magazine covers. Costa Urban Trust Headquarters. All glass and steel and the kind of aggressive modernism that said we own the skyline. The driver opened my door. I stepped out onto the sidewalk and looked up. Valerio stood at the top of the steps, framed by the entrance like a portrait of controlled power. Same charcoal suit, same unreadable expression. But when his gaze found mine, something shifted. A flicker of heat, gone before I could name it. He descended the steps, slowly, each movement deliberate. My pulse climbed with every step he took. When he reached me, he didn't touch. He just stood close enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes, close enough that I felt the space between us like a physical thing. Elena. God, the way he said my name, like he was tasting it, like he'd already decided it belonged to him. Valerio, I kept my voice even, professional. You will not let him see you shake. Nervous? No. His mouth curved. Not quite a smile, something darker. Liar. He offered his arm. I stared at it. At the expensive fabric, the defined forearm beneath it, the implicit claim in the gesture. Take it or run. I took it. His muscles tensed beneath my palm. Solid. Warm. My fingers looked small against his sleeve, and I hated how right it felt, how my body leaned into him before my brain could stop it. We walked up the steps together, and I felt the weight of a dozen invisible eyes tracking us. Staff, security, people who would tell other people, who would tell the press, who would build the narrative Valerio wanted. She chose him. Inside, the lobby was all white marble and recessed lighting. A woman in a slate gray suit met us with a tablet and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Mr. Costa, Ms. Marlowe, conference room 3 is ready. Legal has the statements prepared. Thank you, Simone. Valerio's hand moved to the small of my back, just rested there. A claiming so subtle it felt like a secret. My spine went rigid. My skin burned through 2 layers of fabric. Breathe. You're fine. This means nothing, except it didn't feel like nothing. It felt like a promise. Conference room 3 was less beige, more power. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor, a table large enough to seat 12, and 2 lawyers who looked like they billed in 6-minute increments and enjoyed it. Valerio pulled out a chair for me. I sat. He took the seat beside me, not across, beside. close enough that his knee almost brushed mine under the table. Almost. The older lawyer, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, slid a document across the polished surface. Ms. Marlowe, this is the press statement. Please review. I read. Valerio Costa, chair of Costa Urban Trust, and Elena Marlowe, certified court interpreter, are pleased to announce their engagement. Ms. Marlowe brings a profound commitment to justice and linguistic equity to the partnership. The couple looks forward to supporting initiatives that expand court access and interpreter resources across the city. It was not what I expected. No mention of dowries or fairy tales or whirlwind romance. It read like a policy brief. I wrote it, Valerio said quietly. You're not a decoration, Elena. You're a professional. The statement reflects that. I looked at him. He was already watching me, and the intensity in his gaze made my breath catch. He's playing you. This is strategy. But it didn't feel like strategy. It felt like he'd listened. The Judicial Ethics Board has expedited your reassignment, the younger lawyer added. Effective immediately, you'll interpret for family court and civil cases only. No criminal dockets with any Costa-adjacent defendants or witnesses. My supervisor has already been briefed. By Judge Ortiz herself. Valerio's voice was calm, certain. Your certification is pristine, Elena. No one will question it. Because he'd made sure they couldn't. I should have been furious. I should have thrown the statement back in his face and walked out. Instead, I picked up the pen. Where do I sign? The press conference was a controlled detonation. Valerio stood at a podium with the harbor behind him, and I stood beside him in my charcoal dress, hands folded, spine straight, while cameras flashed and reporters shouted questions. Mr. Costa, how did you meet? Ms. Marlowe, were you surprised by the proposal? Is this connected to the waterfront rezoning vote? Valerio raised one hand. Silence fell like a curtain. Elena and I met through mutual professional circles. Our engagement is personal, not political. However, he glanced at me, and the look lasted half a second too long, burned half a degree too hot. We do share a commitment to equitable access to justice. Ms. Marlowe has been instrumental in shaping a funding proposal for expanded interpreter services, which will be presented to the City Council alongside the Waterfront Initiative. My heart kicked. What? He continued. The proposal includes a scholarship fund for interpreter certification, named in honor of Elena's father, who believed language should never be a barrier to dignity. My throat closed. He'd researched my father. He'd built a scholarship. He'd woven me into his political strategy so thoroughly that I couldn't be dismissed as a bribe. I was a partner. The reporters ate it up. After, in the car, I finally found my voice. You didn't tell me about the scholarship. You would have refused. Yes. He turned to face me, and in the dim back seat, his eyes were almost black. You asked for time, Elena. I'm giving you a legacy. I didn't ask for— You asked for your mother to be safe, for your degree to be finished, for a life where you don't choose between rent and food. His hand moved, just an inch, just enough to rest on the seat between us, fingers close enough to touch mine. I'm giving you all of it. The cost is standing beside me and letting me make you untouchable. Why? The word came out raw. Why me? His gaze dropped to my mouth, lingered, returned to my eyes. Because you didn't beg. You negotiated. You showed me spreadsheets and repayment schedules and told me exactly what you were worth. His voice lowered. Competence is the rarest thing in my world, Elena, and I don't let rare things go. The air in the car went thin. I should have looked away, should have put distance between us, rebuilt the walls, remembered this was a transaction. Instead, I watched his hand move another inch closer. You're afraid of me, he said softly. No. Liar. His fingers brushed mine, once, barely. You're afraid of what you feel when I'm near. My pulse roared in my ears. Deny it. Shut him down. I don't feel anything. His smile was slow, devastating. Another lie. The car stopped. We'd arrived at my apartment. The driver opened the door, and cold air rushed in, breaking the spell. Valerio didn't move. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., we meet with the City Council liaison to review the interpreter initiative. Wear something that says you wrote the policy, not the press release. I got out, paused, looked back. I did write it, didn't I? You will. He held my gaze. I don't need a pretty face beside me, Elena. I need a mind that matches mine. The door closed. The car pulled away. I stood on the sidewalk, shaking, furious, aching, and hating every traitorous nerve in my body that had memorized the ghost of his touch. The next 2 weeks became a masterclass in controlled torture. Meetings, briefings, city hall corridors where we walked side by side, his hand occasionally at my elbow, guiding me through crowds like I was something precious he couldn't risk losing. Every touch was justified, logistical, he'd say, when his palm settled at the small of my back to steer me past a cluster of reporters. Necessary when his fingers brushed mine, passing documents across a conference table. But necessity didn't explain the way his thumb would linger, the way his gaze tracked me across rooms, the way my skin burned for hours after, like he'd branded me with simple proximity. I started dreaming about his hands, woke up furious. The interpreter initiative became mine. He'd meant it. I drafted the funding model, presented to council liaisons, fielded questions about certification costs and language equity. He sat beside me in every meeting, silent unless I needed him. And when I stumbled over a question about budgetary oversight, he leaned in and whispered the answer in Italian, his breath warm against my ear. Controlli incrociati trimestrali. Quarterly cross-checks. My brain translated. My body responded. Heat pooled low in my belly, and I had to dig my nails into my palm to keep my voice steady when I answered the councilman. After the meeting, in the elevator down, I rounded on him. Stop doing that. Doing what? He leaned against the wall, all innocence and dark eyes. I gestured helplessly. The whispering, in Italian. You're an interpreter. I assumed you'd appreciate linguistic precision. You know exactly what you're doing. His smile was sin. Do I? The elevator jolted, stopped. We both looked up. The display flickered. Maintenance mode. Damn it, I muttered, reaching for the emergency button. Leave it. I turned. He was watching me with an expression I couldn't read. Something hungry, something restrained, something that made my knees forget how to lock. Valerio, do you know what competence looks like, Elena? He pushed off the wall, took one step closer, just one. The elevator was small. He was so close I could see the faint line of his jaw, the way his pulse beat in his throat. It looks like you in that council room, dismantling a budget question with 3 sentences and a smile. It looks like your brain working faster than anyone else's and pretending it's effortless. My back hit the wall. I hadn't even realized I'd moved. This is just, my voice cracked. This is a transaction. Is it? Another step. His hand came up, braced against the wall beside my head. Not touching, just there. A cage I could walk out of if I wanted. I didn't walk. You're afraid, he murmured. I'm not. You are. Not of me. Of this. His gaze dropped to my mouth, and I forgot how to breathe. Of the way you lean toward me when you think I'm not looking. The way your pulse kicks when I say your name. The way you're trying so hard to hate me and failing. I do hate you. The words came out breathless, ruined. Liar. The elevator shuddered, lurched. The doors began to open, and we stood there, frozen, breathing the same air, his hand still braced beside my head. My body arched toward his like I'd been caught mid-fall. The doors opened fully. A maintenance worker blinked at us. Oh, sorry folks. You okay? Valerio stepped back, smooth, controlled. Like the last 60 seconds hadn't just rewritten my entire nervous system. We're fine. His voice was even, bored. Thank you. I walked out on shaking legs and didn't look back. That night, I lay in bed and stared at the ceiling. My body hummed. My mind screamed. He's manipulating you. He bought you. This is control dressed up as chemistry. But the elevator hadn't been manipulation. It had been a question, and I'd almost answered. The false connection came 3 days later in a records room at City Hall. I was reviewing case files for a language access audit, dry, tedious work that required 3 kinds of focus I didn't have, when my phone buzzed. A Google alert. Costa engagement raises ethics questions. Activist calls for investigation. My stomach dropped. I opened the article. Avery Lang, the journalist who'd made a career out of exposing city corruption, had published a think piece questioning whether my engagement was a sophisticated form of judicial bribery, and calling for a formal ethics probe into my certification. The comment section was worse. Gold digger. Bought and paid for. How much does a court interpreter cost these days? Apparently, 10 million. The room tilted. My hands went cold. I'd been so careful. I'd done everything right. The reassignment, the documentation, the clean separation between my work and Valerio's world. But none of it mattered. They saw what they wanted to see. A young woman who'd traded her integrity for a ring and a bank account. The door opened. I looked up. Valerio stood in the doorway, jacket gone, sleeves rolled to his elbows, and the look on his face made my breath stop. I saw the article, he said quietly. I'm fine. My voice shook. You're not. He crossed the room, pulled out the chair beside mine, and sat. Close. Too close. His knee brushed mine under the table. They'll destroy me, I whispered. No, they won't. His voice was steel. I won't let them. You can't control— Elena! He turned to face me fully, and his gaze was so intent it hurt. Do you know why I never let anyone close? I blinked. What? When I was 19, I was engaged. To a woman I trusted. She was family, second cousin, raised in the same house, knew every corner of my life. His jaw tightened. She sold private messages to a rival prosecutor, transcripts of conversations I thought were safe. They used them to dismantle a protection deal that would have kept 12 people out of prison. My breath caught. I learned that intimacy is exposure, that the people closest to you are the ones who can cut deepest. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and for the first time, I saw the fracture running through him. I built my life around control because trust is the thing that destroys you. Why are you telling me this? His eyes met mine. Because you're terrified that I'm using you. And I need you to know that I understand the cost of being used. The room was too small, too quiet. This, I gestured between us. This isn't real, isn't it? He reached out slowly, and I watched his hand move toward mine like I was watching a storm roll in. His fingers touched my wrist, found my pulse, pressed down gently. Your heart is racing, Elena. That's real. The way you look at me when you think I'm not watching, that's real. The fact that you signed those papers even though every instinct told you to run, that's real. I signed because I had no choice. You always have a choice. His thumb traced a circle against my pulse point. Once, twice. You chose survival. I chose you. And now we're here, and the world wants to tear you apart for it. I should have pulled away, should have stood, walked out, remembered that this was a man who trafficked in leverage and called it protection. Instead, I let his hand stay on my wrist and felt my pulse betray me with every beat. They'll keep coming, I said. Yes. His voice was quiet, certain. And every time they do, I'll make sure they regret it. Why? Because you're mine to protect now. His grip tightened, just slightly, just enough to feel like a vow. And I don't let anyone hurt what's mine. The door opened again. A clerk poked her head in, saw us, flushed. Oh, sorry, I'll come back. Valerio released my wrist and stood. We were just leaving. Outside, in the hallway, he buttoned his cuffs and looked at me. Dinner, Friday, my place. We'll go over the council presentation. He paused. And Elena? Yes? Wear something comfortable, not for the cameras. For you? He walked away before I could answer. I stood alone in the hallway, wrist still burning, and pressed my palm against my chest to slow my heart. You're falling. Stop. Now. But my body wasn't listening anymore. Friday came too fast. The car picked me up at 7. I wore jeans and a soft sweater, cashmere, the one extravagance I'd allowed myself last year, and felt underdressed the moment I stepped into the lobby of Valerio's building. Penthouse, of course. The elevator required a key. The doors opened directly into his apartment, and I stepped into a space that was all clean lines and dark wood and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor. Valerio stood in the kitchen, an actual kitchen, not a showroom. Sleeves rolled up, no tie. Hair slightly disheveled like he'd run his hands through it. He looked human, devastating, but human. Elena, he smiled. A real one, unguarded. Hungry? I blinked. You cook? Occasionally. He gestured to the island, where ingredients were laid out with the same precision he brought to contracts. I thought we'd work through the presentation over dinner, unless you'd prefer takeout. You're cooking for me. Yes. Why? He looked at me for a long moment. Because I want to. And that simple, honest want, cracked something open in my chest. I sat at the island, watched him move through the space with the same controlled grace he carried everywhere. He poured wine, slid a glass toward me, began chopping vegetables with a knife that probably cost more than my rent. You don't have to do this, I said quietly. I know. I gestured around the pristine kitchen. The dinner, the scholarship, the protection. You don't have to pretend this is more than a transaction. His hands stilled. He set down the knife, braced his palms on the counter, and looked at me. What if I'm not pretending? My breath stopped. What if... He moved around the island slowly until he stood in front of me, close enough to touch. What if every time I plan something for you, it's because I want to see that look on your face, the one where you're surprised someone thought of you first? Valerio. What if I lie awake thinking about the way you bite your lip when you're concentrating, the way you switch languages mid-sentence when you're frustrated, the way you look at me like you're trying to solve an equation that doesn't add up? He reached out, tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. His fingers lingered. I didn't plan this, he said softly. The obsession. I planned the engagement, the press strategy, the protection. But the way I feel when you walk into a room? His jaw tightened. That was never part of the plan. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. This is a bad idea, I whispered. Probably. We have a council vote in 2 weeks. Yes. If this falls apart, it won't. His hand curved around my jaw, tilted my face up. Because I won't let it. And then he kissed me, not soft, not tentative, hungry. His mouth claimed mine like he'd been starving for it. Like every controlled touch over the last 2 weeks had been leading here, to this moment where restraint shattered and want poured through. I gasped against his lips, and he swallowed the sound, deepened the kiss, his other hand sliding into my hair. I grabbed his shirt, pulled him closer, and somewhere in the back of my mind a voice screamed, "Stop. This is control. This is manipulation." But it didn't feel like control. It felt like honesty. His hands were careful, reverent, even as his mouth was devastating. He kissed me like I was the equation he'd been trying to solve. Like every angle of my jaw and curve of my lips was a theorem he needed to prove. When we broke apart, we were both breathing hard. His forehead rested against mine. Tell me to stop. My voice cracked. Tell me this is just a transaction. Tell me you feel nothing. Make me believe it, Elena, and I'll step back. I should have lied. Instead, I pulled him back down and kissed him again. This time, he groaned. A low, broken sound that vibrated through me, and his hands tightened in my hair. The kiss turned molten, all heat and need and the kind of honesty that terrified me. Because this wasn't power. This was want, and want was so much more dangerous. We stumbled back against the counter. His hands found my waist, lifted me onto the granite. I wrapped my legs around him, felt the hard planes of his body against mine, and God, every nerve I had lit up like a live wire. Elena. My name on his lips sounded like a prayer. His phone buzzed. Then mine, then his again. We froze. He pulled back, breathing ragged, and grabbed his phone. His expression shuddered. What? I whispered. He turned the screen toward me. Breaking. Activist journalist Avery Lang to air allegations against Costa engagement tomorrow evening. Ethics probe. Pending, my blood went cold. Valerio's hand curled into a fist. I'll handle it. How? He looked at me. And the predator was back. The man who'd built empires on leverage and called it mercy. However, I have to. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in my own bed, in my own apartment, and felt the ghost of Valerio's hands on my waist, his mouth on mine, the way he'd said my name like it meant everything. My body still hummed. My lips were swollen, and every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face when that notification came through, the way the man who'd kissed me disappeared and the strategist returned. I'll handle it. However, I have to. What did that mean? What lines would he cross? What would he do to protect this carefully constructed narrative we'd built? That I'd somehow convinced myself was becoming real? My phone buzzed at 6:47 a.m. Car at 8. We meet with legal before Lang's broadcast. No good morning. No acknowledgement of what had happened in his kitchen. Just logistics. I typed back, fine. Deleted it. Typed, we need to talk about last night. Deleted that too. Sent, I'll be ready. The car was silent. Valerio sat across from me, not beside me, in a navy suit that looked like armor. His jaw was tight, his gaze fixed on his phone, and he didn't look at me once during the 15-minute drive. The warmth from last night had frozen over. I told myself it was fine. Better even. Safer to remember this was a transaction, a deal. A carefully orchestrated performance for a council vote that would happen in 11 days. Except my ribs ached like something vital had been removed. At Costa Urban Trust headquarters, we were ushered into a conference room where 3 lawyers and a PR consultant waited with grim expressions. Ms. Lang has confirmed she'll air allegations that the dowry constitutes judicial bribery, the silver-haired lawyer began without preamble. She's obtained bank records. We're investigating the leak. And she'll argue that Ms. Marlowe's reassignment was a cover, not a safeguard. My stomach dropped. Bank records. Sanitized, Valerio said flatly. The source information is redacted. She has the transfer amount and the memo line. Nothing more. Nothing more is enough, the PR consultant said. She was young, sharp-eyed, and looked like she enjoyed controlled demolitions. The optics are terrible. A 22-year-old interpreter receives $10 million from a man under semi-regular federal scrutiny, and 2 days later they're engaged. Even with the ethics clearance, it reads as transactional. It is transactional, I said quietly. Everyone looked at me. Valerio's gaze finally met mine. Cold, unreadable. Is it? He asked. The question landed like a blade. I couldn't answer, not here, not with an audience. The consultant continued. We have 2 options. 1, aggressive counter-narrative. Emphasize the interpreter initiative, the scholarship, Ms. Marlowe's independent credibility. Humanize the relationship. Leak some softer moments. Make them believe it's real. Or, Valerio's voice was ice. Or Ms. Marlowe steps back. Returns the funds to a blind trust, which you've already established. Releases a statement saying the engagement was premature, and you both move on. The council vote takes a hit, but your reputation survives. Hers might too, if we frame it as a young woman who got swept up and made a smart exit. The room went silent. I looked at Valerio. His expression was carved from stone. Which do you recommend? He asked. The consultant hesitated. Honestly, option 2, cut losses. The timing is suspicious no matter how you spin it. And Ms. Marlowe's career? My career is fine, I snapped. I've done nothing wrong. Perception is reality, Ms. Marlowe. Then change the perception, Valerio said quietly, dangerously. We go with option 1. The consultant nodded. We'll need access, photos, personal anecdotes, something that proves emotional investment. The public needs to believe you're in love. My throat closed. Give us the room, Valerio said. The lawyers and consultant filed out. The door clicked shut. Silence. He stood at the window, hands in his pockets, shoulders tight. You should take option 2, he said, without turning around. I stared at his back. What? Step back. Return the funds. Walk away. His voice was flat, empty. Your certification survives. Your reputation survives. You finish your degree and forget this happened. And you, I'll manage. The vote is politics. I've lost votes before. He finally turned, and his eyes were shuttered. But if you stay, they'll tear you apart. Lang won't stop. My enemies won't stop. Every case you interpret, every word you speak, will be questioned. They'll turn you into a symbol of everything wrong with this city, and His jaw tightened. I won't do that to you. My heart cracked. So last night was a mistake. The words hit like a fist. A mistake, I repeated. Yes. He looked away. I let my guard down. I shouldn't have. You kissed me. You told me. I told you what you needed to hear to feel safe. His voice was clinical now. The warmth I'd heard in his kitchen completely gone. This was always a transaction, Elena. I'm sorry if I made you believe otherwise. The room spun. You're mine to protect now. What if I'm not pretending? Tell me you feel nothing. Make me believe it. All lies, all strategy. I stood. My legs shook, but I stood. You're right, I said quietly. This was a mistake. All of it. I walked to the door. Elena? I didn't turn around. I'll release a statement by tonight. Consider the engagement over. I walked out before he could see me break. I made it to the street before the tears came, not sobs. I didn't have the breath for sobs. Just silent, furious tears that blurred the sidewalk and made every stranger's face a smudge. Mistake. Transaction. I told you what you needed to hear. I'd known this was a deal, a strategy, a carefully constructed lie. But somewhere between the elevator and his kitchen and the way he'd kissed me like I was the only true thing in his life, I'd let myself forget. I'd let myself want. And wanting had destroyed me. I walked, rode the subway, ended up at my apartment and stood in the kitchen, my tiny, cramped kitchen that smelled like burned toast and instant coffee, and tried to remember who I'd been 3 weeks ago. Competent, careful, alone, safe. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Ms. Marlowe, this is Avery Lang. I'd like to speak with you off the record. I think you deserve to know what you're really caught up in. I stared at the message. Deleted it. Another buzz. Please, I'm not your enemy. He is. My thumb hovered over the delete button. Then I typed, where? We met at a coffee shop in a neighborhood where no one knew my face. Avery Lang sat in the back corner, laptop open. Recording device visible on the table. She was younger than I expected. Mid-30s maybe. Sharp suit, sharper eyes. Thank you for coming, she said. I sat. Didn't order anything. You have 5 minutes. Fair. She slid a folder across the table. I want to show you something. I opened it. Bank statements, legal documents, a chain of transactions dating back 6 months. My father's name was on half of them. My blood went cold. What is this? A debt your father incurred before he died. $23,000 to a gray market lender named Salvieri, who happens to be bankrolled by Rocco De Luca, Valerio Costa's primary rival. She tapped one document. This is the original loan. This, another tap, is a transfer of ownership to Costa Urban Trust, dated 4 months ago. I couldn't breathe. Valerio bought your father's debt, Avery said quietly. 4 months before you sent that email. 4 months before he coincidentally received your plea and decided to help. The room tilted. He's been watching you, Ms. Marlowe. He knew your financial situation. He knew your mother's employment was vulnerable. He engineered this entire scenario to trap you into an engagement that serves his political interests. She leaned forward. You're not his fiancé. You're his pawn. I stared at the documents, at my father's signature, at the transfer dated February 14th, Valentine's Day. Because of course Valerio would have a sense of humor about purchasing leverage. Why are you showing me this? My voice sounded far away. Because I don't think you knew, and I think you deserve the truth before you destroy your career for a man who sees you as a chess piece. She paused. I'm running the story tomorrow, with or without your comment. But if you walk away now, publicly, I can frame you as a victim, not a co-conspirator. I closed the folder, stood. Ms. Marlowe, I need to think. I walked out into the cold afternoon and didn't stop walking until my legs gave out on a bench 3 blocks away. He'd bought my father's debt. 4 months ago, before the email, before the $10 million, before everything. I don't let rare things go. Not because I was competent, because I was convenient. A perfect pawn with the right credentials and enough desperation to be controlled. Every touch. Every whispered word in Italian. Every moment I thought was real, manufactured. My phone buzzed. V, where are you? I turned it off. I went home, packed a bag, called my mother. I need you to take a few days off work, I said, voice steady despite the screaming in my chest. We're leaving the city. Elena, what? Please, Mom, trust me, just this once. Silence. Then, okay, baby, okay. I was folding clothes into a duffel when my apartment door opened. I spun. Valerio stood in my doorway, breathing hard, jacket gone, tie loosened, and the look on his face, raw, desperate. You can't run, he said. Watch me. I shoved another shirt into the bag. Elena, listen to me. No. I rounded on him. You listen to me. You bought my father's debt. 4 months ago, you set this up. All of it. His face went white. Avery showed me the documents, I continued, voice shaking. The transfer, the dates. You've been planning this since February, and My voice cracked. I actually started to believe you cared. I do care. You care about the vote, about your waterfront deal, about having the perfect prop to sell your reform narrative. Tears burned my eyes. I was never a person to you. I was a strategy. That's not, he took a step forward. I took one back. Don't, my voice broke. Don't come near me. Don't touch me. Don't pretend this was ever anything but a transaction. It wasn't. His hands curled into fists. It started as strategy. I won't lie about that. I saw an opportunity and I took it. But Elena, his voice cracked. The moment you walked into that conference room and looked at me like I was a problem you could solve. The moment you signed those papers and told me you wouldn't owe yourself to anyone, I stopped controlling you and started. He exhaled, ragged. I started needing you. Needing my cooperation. Needing you. He crossed the room and I backed into the counter. Your voice, your mind. The way you stand in front of a council member and dismantle their argument without raising your voice. The way you bite your lip when you're thinking. The way you... His hand came up, hovered near my face, dropped. I didn't plan to fall for you. I planned to protect you. But somewhere between the press conference and the elevator and my kitchen, you stopped being a strategy and became the only real thing in my life. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to. But the documents didn't lie. You bought my father's debt, I whispered. Yes. You manipulated me. Yes. No hesitation, no excuse. I saw an opening and I took it. That's what I do. I control variables and minimize risk and make sure the people I care about are safe whether they want me to or not. His jaw tightened. But I didn't make you kiss me in that hallway. I didn't make you lean into me in meetings. I didn't make you look at me like... He stopped. Like I was worth saving. I can't trust you. I know. I can't do this. I know. His voice was broken. But Elena, if you run, Rocco wins. He'll come for your mother, for your certification, for everything I've tried to protect. And He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. I can't protect you if you're not beside me. My chest ached. That's not love, that's control. Maybe, he stepped back, gave me space. Or maybe it's the only way I know how to love. The room was too small, too quiet. Avery's running the story tomorrow, I said. Let her. She'll destroy us both. Then we burn together. His gaze held mine. Or you walk away and I burn alone. Your choice, Elena. It always was. My phone, still on the counter, still off, buzzed back to life. Notification after notification. I turned it over, 17 missed calls, 30 texts. The most recent from my mother. Baby, men in suits just came to the clinic. They're saying I'm fired. What's happening? The floor dropped out from under me. What did you do? I whispered. Valerio's face went cold. That wasn't me. Another text. They said it's about you, about the engagement. Elena, I'm scared. I looked up at him. Fix this. I will. But I need you to trust me. I don't. Then trust that I keep my promises. He pulled out his phone, dialed. Simone, I need a legal team at Sacred Heart Legal Aid Clinic in 10 minutes. Full intimidation protocol. No one touches Mrs. Marlowe. He hung up, looked at me. Get your mother, bring her here. I'll have security outside your building until this is resolved. Why? Because whatever Rocco's doing, he's moving faster than I expected. And I won't let him use your mother to get to you. Another text. This time from an unknown number. Your mother's employment is contingent on your cooperation, Ms. Marlowe. Meet me at Pier 9, Warehouse 7, in 1 hour. Come alone, or she's unemployed and homeless by morning. S.V. Salvieri. The lender. My hands shook. Valerio saw the screen. His expression turned to murder. You're not going. He has leverage on my mother's job. He has nothing. That clinic's funding comes from 3 sources. city grants, which I control, private donors, which I am, and a federal legal aid subsidy that's untouchable. He took the phone from my hands. This is a bluff to isolate you. You walk into that warehouse and you don't walk out. Then what do? He looked at me. And for the first time since this started, I saw him without the armor. Just a man who'd built his entire life around control, because trust had nearly killed him once. A man who was asking me to trust him anyway. You let me handle it, he said quietly. You stay here, with security, with your mother, and you let me do what I do best. Which is? His smile was sharp, cold, and absolutely ruthless. Dismantle my enemies so thoroughly they forget they ever had the audacity to threaten what's mine. Valerio left. I stood in my apartment, now surrounded by 2 security guards who'd appeared like shadows, and tried to process the last 48 hours. He'd bought my father's debt. He'd engineered this, but he'd also just deployed a legal team to protect my mother and was walking into whatever trap Rocco had set with the kind of cold certainty that said he'd done this before. I didn't plan to fall for you. My chest ached. I called my mother. Mom, stay at the clinic. Don't leave. There are lawyers coming. Elena, what is happening? Her voice shook. These men said, they're lying. Valerio's handling it. Just please, trust me. Silence. Then, is he good to you, baby? The question cracked something open. I don't know. Do you want him to be? My throat closed. Yes. Then give him the chance to prove it. We hung up. I paced. The security guard stood silent, immovable. My phone buzzed. A text from Valerio. V, your mother is secure. Legal team is filing harassment charges against Vieri. He won't touch her. Then another. Stay inside. I mean it, Elena. I typed back. What are you doing? 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. V, keeping my promises. 2 hours later, my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Hello? Ms. Marlowe. A man's voice, rough, unfamiliar. You should turn on channel 7, now. The line went dead. I grabbed the remote, flipped to channel 7. Avery Lang stood outside a police station, microphone in hand, hair whipping in the wind. Breaking news tonight as federal investigators have arrested Salvatore Vieri, a known associate of the DeLuca crime family, on charges of extortion, racketeering, and witness intimidation. Sources say the arrest came after new evidence was provided by. She paused, glanced at her notes. Valerio Costa, who has been cooperating with federal prosecutors for the last 6 months as part of a sealed investigation into waterfront corruption. My heart stopped. The screen cut to footage. Sal Vieri in handcuffs, being led out of a warehouse. Pier 9, Warehouse 7. The same location he'd tried to lure me to. Avery continued. This arrest appears connected to threats made against Elena Marlowe, Costa's fiancée, and her mother. Federal prosecutors have confirmed that recorded communications between Vieri and Rocco DeLuca, underboss of the DeLuca syndicate, will be used as evidence in ongoing RICO proceedings. The screen showed another image. Rocco DeLuca, stone-faced, being escorted into a federal building. Costa Urban Trust released a statement minutes ago, clarifying that the so-called dowry at the center of recent controversy was, in fact, protection money placed in a blind trust after Costa became aware of threats against Ms. Marlowe. The trust, which Ms. Marlowe can access or dissolve at her discretion, was established with the cooperation of federal authorities as part of a witness protection strategy. I sat down hard on the couch. He'd been cooperating with the feds for 6 months, the debt purchase, the engagement, the $10 million. It wasn't just strategy, it was protection. Avery's face filled the screen again. In light of these developments, this journalist wishes to issue a correction and an apology to Ms. Elena Marlowe. The engagement, which I characterized as potential bribery, appears to have been a protective measure in an ongoing federal investigation. Ms. Marlowe's integrity and certification remain intact. The broadcast cut to commercial. I stared at the blank screen. My phone rang. Valerio? I answered. You are working with the FBI. Yes. His voice was tight, exhausted. For 6 months. Yes. The dowry was protection. Legal, documented, approved by federal prosecutors. I couldn't tell you because the investigation was sealed. If Rocco had known, He exhaled. He would have killed you to get to me. My hands shook. So everything, the press conference, the initiative, my voice broke. The kitchen. That was all? The press conference was strategy. The initiative was politics. His voice dropped, rough and raw. The kitchen was me losing my mind because I couldn't keep my hands off you for one more second. Silence. Where are you? I whispered. Federal building, giving a statement. I'll be here another hour. And then I'm coming to you, if... He hesitated. If you want me to. I closed my eyes. Valerio? You don't have to decide now. You don't have to decide ever. The trust is yours. Your mother's job is secured through contracts that have nothing to do with me. Your certification is clean. You can walk away, Elena. No strings, no consequences. What about the vote? A long pause. I'll manage. That's not an answer. The vote is in 9 days. Without you. His voice tightened. I'll probably lose. Rocco's allies will spin this as proof I'm unstable, that the engagement was a cover for federal cooperation, that I can't be trusted. Moderates will pull their support. And the waterfront rezoning? Dies, along with the interpreter initiative, the scholarship fund, and any chance of cutting Rocco's trafficking revenue. My chest squeezed. So I'm still a chess piece. No. The word came out sharp. You're the woman He stopped, exhaled. You're the woman I fell for while trying to keep her alive. And I'm the man who's asking you to choose me anyway, even though I don't deserve it. Tears burned my eyes. I need time. Take all of it. I'll wait. The line went dead. I didn't sleep that night either. I lay in bed and thought about control, about strategy, about the way Valerio's hands had shaken when he steadied that paper in the hallway, the way he'd built a scholarship in my father's name, the way he'd kissed me like he was drowning and I was air. I didn't plan to fall for you. I'd spent 3 weeks hating him for making me feel owned. But he'd never owned me. He'd just made space for me in a world that usually crushed people like me into dust. At 3 a.m., I got up, opened my laptop, pulled up the interpreter initiative draft, the one I'd written, the one Valerio had told the council was mine. I read it, every word. Then I opened a new document and started writing. The sun was rising when I finished. A speech. 3 pages, every word mine. I showered. Dressed in navy, the color he'd told me to wear that first day. Put on the coat my mother had bought me for my certification ceremony. Texted Valerio, "Where's the council vote?" His reply came instantly, like he'd been waiting. City Hall, Chambers B, 2:00 p.m. I'll be there. 3 dots. Then, Elena. I didn't let him finish. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for me. I turned off my phone and walked out into the cold morning. City Hall was chaos, press, protesters, signs that read Costa bought justice, and others that read protect Elena. I pushed through the crowd, badge in hand, and security waved me through. Inside, the marble hallways echoed with voices, council members, lawyers, staffers running on caffeine and panic. I found Valerio in a side corridor, surrounded by advisors. He looked wrecked, suit immaculate, but hair disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it, dark circles under his eyes. When he saw me, he went still. Elena. Everyone else melted away. We stood 5 feet apart, and the air between us felt like a chasm. You look tired, I said. I haven't slept in 2 days. His voice was hoarse. Are you... He stopped, started again. Are you okay? No. I took a step closer. I'm furious at you. For the manipulation, for the control, for making me fall for you while lying about why. His jaw tightened. I know. But I'm also furious at myself, for being so desperate I sent that email, for signing your papers without reading the fine print, for kissing you in that hallway because I wanted to stop the world from roaring. Another step. For wanting you even when I knew better. Elena, let me finish. I was close enough now to see the gold flecks in his eyes, the pulse in his throat. You said you didn't plan to fall for me, that I stopped being a strategy and became the only real thing in your life. I held his gaze. I need to know if that was true, because if it was manipulation, another tactic to keep me compliant, then we're done. But if it was real, the words came out ragged. desperate. Every word. Elena, I have spent 15 years building walls so high no one could reach me. And you— His hand came up, hovered near my face. You walked into my life with spreadsheets and dignity and a refusal to be small. And every wall I had just— He exhaled. Crumbled. You bought my father's debt. I did. Because I saw an opportunity and I took it. That's what I do. I control variables. But I didn't control falling for you. I didn't control the way my chest tightens when you walk into a room. I didn't control lying awake at night, replaying the sound of your voice saying my name. His hand finally touched my face, fingertips gentle against my jaw. I manipulated the circumstances, but what I feel, that was never strategy. My breath caught. Prove it, I whispered. How? I pulled the folded speech from my bag and handed it to him. Read this, and if you change a single word, if you try to control my voice one more time, we're done. He unfolded it, read. I watched his expression shift. Surprise. Then something that looked like awe. Elena, this is— He looked up. You're going to eviscerate the moderates. Half of them will hate you. I know. They'll question your loyalty, your judgment. I know. And you're willing to risk it. I'm not risking it for you. I stepped closer. Close enough that I had to tilt my head back to hold his gaze. I'm risking it for me. Because I wrote a policy that will help people like my mother, like every interpreter who's ever been underpaid and overworked and told their language isn't worth funding. And I'm not letting anyone, silence that. Not Rocco, not the council, not you. His smile was slow, devastating. You terrify me. Good, I took the speech back. Now get out of my way. I have a vote to win. Chambers B was packed. Council members, press, observers. I saw Avery Lang in the back, camera crew beside her. Saw my mother in the third row, hands clasped, eyes wet. Valerio sat at the front table, flanked by lawyers. When I walked in, his gaze tracked me across the room, and I felt it like a hand at my back. The council president called the session to order. Today we vote on Resolution 47B, Waterfront Rezoning and Associated Justice Initiatives. We'll hear final statements before the vote. She glanced at her notes. Mr. Costa has requested that Ms. Elena Marlowe, his fiancée and the author of the interpreter equity proposal, address the council. Murmurs rippled through the room. I walked to the microphone. The chamber went silent. I unfolded my speech, set it on the podium, and looked out at the council members, at their skeptical faces, at Rocco's allies in the back, already smirking. My name is Elena Marlowe, I began. I'm 22 years old. I'm a certified court interpreter. And 3 weeks ago, I sent an email begging for $20,000 because I was terrified my mother would lose her job and I'd lose my certification. Gasps. Whispers. That email went to the wrong person. It went to Valerio Costa. And he answered with $10 million and an engagement I didn't ask for. The room erupted. The president banged her gavel. Let her finish. Silence fell again. You all know this, I continued. You've read the headlines. You've seen Avery Lang's initial coverage. You've formed opinions about who I am and what this engagement means. I gripped the podium. But what you don't know, what I didn't know until 2 days ago, is that Valerio Costa has been cooperating with federal investigators for 6 months. That the $10 million wasn't a dowry. It was protection money placed in a blind trust while he helped dismantle a trafficking operation tied to this waterfront rezoning. More gasps. He didn't buy me, he saved me, and my mother. And probably a dozen other people you'll never hear about because that's what he does. He controls variables so the people he cares about survive. I paused. But here's the thing. I don't want to be a variable. I don't want to be controlled or protected or kept in a beautiful cage, even if that cage comes with scholarships and security. I looked at Valerio. His eyes were on me, burning. I want to be a partner. I want my voice to matter, not because I'm standing beside a powerful man, but because the policy I wrote is good. Because interpreters deserve funding. Because language should never be a barrier to justice. I turned back to the council. The waterfront rezoning vote isn't about me or my engagement or Valerio Costa's reputation. It's about whether this city funds a trafficking corridor or builds something better. It's about whether we invest in justice infrastructure or let vulnerable people fall through cracks we're too busy to notice. My voice hardened. And it's about whether you're brave enough to vote for something good, even when it's tied to something complicated. Silence. The Interpreter Initiative is attached to this resolution. If you vote no, you kill both. If you vote yes, you fund a waterfront project and a justice program that will outlive every scandal, every headline, every messy human moment. I folded the speech. I'm not asking you to trust Valerio Costa. I'm asking you to trust me, because this policy is mine, and it's good. I stepped back from the podium. The chamber stayed silent for 3 long seconds. Then my mother stood and started clapping. Someone else joined. Then another. Within seconds, half the room was applauding. I walked back to my seat beside Valerio. He didn't touch me, just leaned close enough that his voice was for me alone. You're extraordinary, my pulse kicked. Did I win? I don't know, his gaze held mine. But I just watched you take ownership of your own life in front of 200 people. So yes, you won. The vote took 20 minutes. When the president announced the results, Resolution 47B passes, 11-4. The room erupted again. Valerio's hand found mine under the table. Squeezed once, I squeezed back. After, in the hallway, we were swarmed. Press, council members. My mother, sobbing, pulling me into a hug. You were so brave, baby, so brave. I learned from you, Mama. When the crowd finally thinned, Valerio and I stood alone in a side corridor, the same one where we'd first touched, where pages had scattered across marble and everything had begun. So, he said quietly, now what? I looked at him, at this man who'd manipulated me and protected me and made me furious and made me feel, who'd built cages and called them safety, who'd fallen for me while trying to control me and didn't know how to reconcile the two. Now, I said slowly, you take me to dinner, somewhere that's not a strategy session or a press event, somewhere I can ask you questions and you answer honestly. No scripts, no lawyers, just, I hesitated. Just you. And if I can't stop trying to protect you, then I'll stop you. I stepped closer. I'm not fragile, Valerio. I'm not a variable to control. I'm your equal, and if you can't see me that way, I do. His hand came up, cupped my face. Elena, I see you more clearly than I've ever seen anything. You terrify me because you make me want things I swore I'd never want again. Trust, partnership, someone who calls me on my bullshit and doesn't flinch. I'll always call you on your bullshit. His smile was soft, real. I know. And I'll always fight you when you try to control me. I know that too. His thumb traced my cheekbone. But will you fight with me? Not as my asset or my fiancé or my strategy, as my partner? My throat closed. This was the question, the real one. Not do you forgive me or can you trust me, but will you choose me anyway, knowing I'm broken and controlling and terrible at love? I thought about the elevator, the kitchen, the way he'd said my name like a prayer, the scholarship in my father's name, the trust account I could dissolve with one signature. The fact that he'd walked into a federal building and risked everything to keep me safe. Yes, I whispered. His forehead touched mine. Yes? Yes, but on one condition. Anything. The trust. The $10 million. I pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. Half of it goes to the interpreter scholarship. Immediately. Non-negotiable. He stared at me, then laughed. A real laugh. Surprised and delighted. You're going to ruin me. No. I slid my arms around his neck. I'm going to balance you. And then I kissed him, not desperate this time, not fueled by panic or anger or the need to stop the world from roaring. This kiss was a choice, deliberate, honest. His arms came around me, pulled me close, and he kissed me back like I'd just handed him salvation. His mouth was gentle, reverent, and when his hands slid into my hair, they trembled slightly, like he still couldn't quite believe I was real. Elena, he whispered against my lips. Valerio, I love you. The words came out rough, unpracticed. I don't know how to do this. I'll probably try to control you again. I'll definitely drive you insane. But He pulled back just enough to look at me. I love you. My chest ached. I love you too. even though you bought my father's debt and ambushed me with $10 million and made me fall for you while lying about half of it. Especially because of all that? No, I smiled. In spite of it. His laugh vibrated through me. I'll take it. We stood there in the marble hallway, wrapped around each other, while the city moved around us and the vote we'd just won started reshaping the waterfront. Dinner, I said eventually. You promised. I did. He pressed a kiss to my forehead. Your place or mine? Yours, but I'm cooking. You cook? Terribly, I grinned. But you're going to eat it anyway and tell me it's perfect. Deal. He laced his fingers through mine. And Elena? Yes? Thank you. For what? His smile was soft, unguarded. For choosing me when you didn't have to. For seeing past the walls. For being brave enough to stay. I squeezed his hand. Thank you for making space. We walked out of City Hall together, past cameras and questions and people who would spend months dissecting our relationship in editorials and think pieces. But none of it mattered. Because I wasn't his possession. I was his counterpart. And this city could watch us build something real, on our terms. 6 weeks later, the Elena Marlowe Interpreter Scholarship announced its first 5 recipients at a ceremony held in the City Hall Rotunda. My mother cried. Avery Lang covered it fairly. The council members who'd voted yes showed up and smiled for photos. Valerio stood beside me in a charcoal suit, hand resting lightly at the small of my back, and when I finished my speech, he leaned down and whispered in Italian. Sei la cosa più vera che abbia mai conosciuto. You are the truest thing I have ever known. I turned my head slightly, just enough that my words were only for him. You're still controlling. I know. You tried to rearrange my calendar last week. You told me no. And you listened. His smile was soft, private. I'm learning. After the ceremony, we went back to his penthouse, our penthouse now. I'd moved in 2 weeks ago after a fight about whether I should keep paying rent on my apartment. I should. Versus accepting that we were building a life together, he won. We cooked dinner together, badly, burned the pasta, ordered takeout. And later, when the city lights glittered outside the floor-to-ceiling windows and we lay tangled together on the couch, his hand tracing lazy patterns on my hip, I thought about the email I'd sent at 2:47 a.m. I'd asked for time. He'd given me forever, not the cage kind, the partnership kind, the kind where I could still be mine while choosing to be his. Elena, his voice was low, sleep-rough. I'm glad you misspelled that email, I smiled against his chest. Liar. Okay, fine. I'm glad I bought your father's debt and manipulated you into an engagement and made you fall for me through morally questionable means. I bit his shoulder lightly. He laughed. But mostly, he continued. I'm glad you stayed, even when I gave you every reason to run. I lifted my head, met his eyes. I didn't stay for you. I know. I stayed for me, because I wanted this. The partnership, the fight, I hesitated. The love. His hand cupped my face. And now? Now I stay because I choose to, every day. He kissed me, slow, deep. The kind of kiss that said home and always and mine. When we broke apart, he smiled. You're still the most terrifying thing that's ever happened to me. Good, I settled back against his chest. Listened to his heartbeat, steady and strong. That means I'm doing it right. Outside, the city hummed. Inside, we burned. Not the destructive kind. The kind that lights the way home.